I'm actually joined today by Ryan, who's one of our RolandCare engineers, who's going to be sitting in and running through this presentation for you. So he's the man for any questions. I'm just kind of here to host the thing. So with no further ado, I'll pass you over to Ryan and we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. So some of you may have met me before if you've had any maintenance visits or any issues with your machines. So as it says here, I'm one of the field service engineers here at RolandCare. So my job is to make sure that things work or stay working. I've worked for Roland on and off for 12 years now, so I've got a fair amount of experience in things. Today I'm going to be talking about maintaining and looking after your Roland printer. If you have had your machine for a while, hopefully you know some of these things already, but if not, then fingers crossed, you'll be able to take some things away to keep your machine running in tip-top condition. So onto our first slide. Sorry, wrong button. So yeah, basically what we're looking at is if you put time and money into the machine's going to look after you. You get that nice big thumbs up. So if your machine is not being maintained properly, these are some of the telltale signs you're going to see. So you're probably going to get some dust sitting on the surface of the head or dust around the edge of the print head. And this can cause things like clogged, misdirected nozzles. You can get ink drips where drips of ink will sit on the surface of the head, and then they'll almost kind of run down dust or fibers and then just drip as the machine is kind of running across. And also, if you've got hairs on the head, if they're long enough to touch the material, they can actually, as you can see in that third kind of cell on the screen, you can see that it can kind of drag the ink around before it's had a chance to dry properly. That's really not ideal. That can cause some quite nasty looking prints. It's generally not as bad as it looks, but if you keep up your maintenance on it, you can normally avoid that from happening. So these are the kind of things that you should be keeping to hand, ready to do your manual cleans on the machine. So you should be doing this weekly. You can, some customers do leave it for a lot longer period of time, but it's highly recommended you do it weekly, and that is the official guideline. That keeps the machine nice and clean, keeps any muck off from around the head, and obviously it keeps it printing nicely, which means you're less likely to have any kind of downtime if you have any issues with it. So the first thing that you should be looking at is cleaning swabs. You will have got a pack of these with the machine, along with some of the cleaning liquid there. So you can get these, order these from your ink supplier, usually if you begin to run out. But these are going to be the main things you'll use as part of the cleaning. You'll also, ideally, you'll have a lab coat or some kind of coat to wear in order to cover your skin, as you don't want to risk getting any of this solution, the cleaning solution, on your skin. If you do, clean it off immediately. The same goes for the gloves and goggles. They're there to protect you. The tweezers are there just in case you get a slight buildup of any kind of fluff that's a little bit too thick or too clumpy to take off using the swabs. And sometimes you can get a little bit of congealed ink if the machine hasn't been cleaned for a very, very long time. Those tweezers are handy to pick off any congealed ink.
Now, there is one thing that I'm just going to jump in here on, Ryan, just that that I tend to suggest to people for cleaning as well, that can be very useful, not always, depending on where your printer is a torch. It's not necessarily something to clean with, but it really does help when you're looking inside the sort of darker areas of your machine to spot any bits of fluff and things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, that's definitely something worth keeping to hand as well. Some of the newer models do have little lights built into them pointing at the print head, so when you're doing your manual cleans, they're fairly visible anyway. But not all of our latest models do, and obviously everything before that, it's generally, yeah, a torch is going to be a pretty good shout. So up next, we're just going to very quickly go through some of the manual cleaning processes for different models or different styles of print heads. There are videos on our YouTube channel which go through these in a little more detail. But generally, you're going to be looking at this particular type of machine is going to be either a VS or an XR, an RF, an RT, anything with one of the square print heads. These ones, again, as per usual, you're going to want to be cleaning around the edge of the print head. So you don't want to be touching the surface of the head unless you're having any print quality issues. If you speak to our tech support team, there is a possibility they may ask you to clean the surface of the head, but it's very unusual. I recommend avoiding doing that off of your own back, because that can make things worse. It's generally just kind of a last resort kind of thing. Once you've cleaned around the head, you also want to be cleaning around the head guards as well, which unfortunately they're not very visible in this photo, but they're little black blocks. They're usually on either side of the head carriage. So if you look at the bottom of the head carriage here, they are these parts here. If you clean those, they tend to be areas where you get a lot of fluff buildup, especially if you're printing in an area where there's a lot of fibers. So places that do a lot of t-shirt transfer materials, they tend to build up an awful lot around these places. Then you've also got the wiper blades. So as you can see, on this model, you've got one rubber wiper blade, and you've also got a felt wiper blade. That one doesn't need cleaning, but the rubber wiper blade definitely needs cleaning on a regular basis. So every time you do your print heads, you want to be cleaning that. Otherwise, effectively, all you're going to be doing is cleaning the muck off the print head and then wiping it straight back on again as soon as the machine goes to do an automatic clean. So our next step is going to be to look at the slightly older type print heads. So these you'll find on all of our Versa UV machines, our Soljet Pro 3s, older Versa cams. So if your print heads look like these ones, again, you want to be cleaning around the edge of the head and making sure not to touch the surface. Very occasionally with these ones, I found that you can get a little buildup around this edge of the little bezel. So if you do get a buildup, it's generally caked on ink. Very gently around that edge, just kind of dab it and make sure to clear off any excess gunked on ink. Again, you've got the head guards over here. You have one on each end of the print carriage. So again, make sure to clear those off nicely. Otherwise, they can get built up. These models, you've got two types of wiper blades. So if you've got a Versa UV, you've probably got a completely rubber wiper in there. That you want to clean both sides of the wiper. On any of our normal eco solvent machines, you'll have rubber on the front and felt on the rear. You want to try and just clean the rubber side of it. The felt side will just soak up the cleaning solution and it just won't soak up any ink then after that. So next up we have the new TrueViz style print heads. It's the same sort of process. So around the edge of the heads again. You've also got head guards. Rather than having larger head guards around the sides of the print head, you've now got head guards on the front and rear of the print carriage. So that's going to need cleaning. These tend not to pick up very much muck because they're just made out of steel, but they can pick up a little bit, and they probably will over time because these machines are still fairly new, so they haven't necessarily had much time to build up too much ink or fluff. These ones, unfortunately, you can't see it very well in the photo, but on the diagram over here, you can see that the bezel kind of has like a part that's proud. Again, you can clean this surface, just be very careful not to touch the actual surface of the print head itself. Next up, you're going to be cleaning the wiper blade. So you can see here that the wiper blade is this part. It's difficult to see because it's such a dark surface. I did take this photo, surprisingly, with a flash. And it still didn't come out very well because it effectively matches the surface behind it. This wiper doesn't tend to build up all that much with congealed ink. This sits inside a trough of cleaning solution, so generally that tends to look after it pretty well and break down anything that might be attaching itself. That's it for the VG range. They're generally pretty good. On all of these machines, you'll need to give the cap tops a bit of a clean on each maintenance, on each weekly maintenance as well. So this, for example, this is the DX4 cap top, which is on the Versa UV and the old Versa cams and old Pro 3s and Pro 2s. So you just want to be cleaning around this black part. The same goes for all of our cap tops. Generally, you just want to be cleaning the surround and the rubber portion of the cap top. You don't really need to clean the sponge. If you do, it's not the end of the world. It should wash itself away. Now, this is one of the common problems that I see out on site. I see this from time to time, and basically what can happen is if, for example, you accidentally nudge the cap top out of position when you're doing your manual cleans, it can cause the cap top to stay stuck out of position. So what can happen then is, instead of drawing ink through the print head, it's not going to form a very tight seal. In fact, it's probably not going to seal at all. You're most likely going to find that you'll lose an entire color, or a lot of an entire color coming through the print head. So in this case, what I'd recommend is put it into manual cleaning mode. Just have a look over the cap top, and if it looks like it's not sitting flush to the surface, or it's not level with the other cap tops, it's probably a better way of looking at it. Just kind of poke it with a cleaning swab or pop a glove on. The glove's probably an easier option, and just kind of wiggle it around a little bit or press it in. The spring should help it relocate. And then if you run a clean, you'll probably find the vast majority of that print head will start firing again correctly. So next up, just a few other areas you want to be cleaning. So you have the UV lamp on our Versa UV machines. So this is the underside. You'll be able to access this in manual cleaning mode, the same as you would do with the with normal print head cleaning. The surface of the lamp is a little delicate, but if you clean it with isopropanol and a lint-free cloth, it should take any ink off the surface. What can happen sometimes is if any ink drifts and floats onto the surface of that lamp, it will cure solid. So periodically, just giving it a bit of a wipe down to keep it clear. Otherwise, you may find that the ink just doesn't cure very well, that you're actually trying to print onto. Next up, you've got pinch rollers, and by extension as well, I'd say probably the grit wheel. So the pinch wheel is this portion here, and the grit wheel is this portion here. Now, obviously, this feeds the material through the machine. If the pinch wheel itself is starting to wear or it's getting very dirty, I'm cleaning up with a little bit of isopropanol, a little bit of lint-free cloth. Normally that will kind of bring back some of its bite, and it'll start picking it up again. If it's not able to pull through properly, what will happen is the material might wave from side to side a little bit as it feeds through, almost like having a flat tire on a car. It's just not going to track properly. Grit wheel, I tend to recommend just cleaning that from time to time. That's a little bit tougher, but usually a toothbrush will normally do it up. Quite a hard bristle toothbrush will do the job quite nicely, because what that can do is, if you're doing a lot of cut vinyl, you can pick up bits in there of kind of little offcuts, and then it's just not going to be able to grip hold of anything. Next up, the print bed. If you've got a print-only machine, you'll have a reflective strip on the surface, which is this bit here, which is highlighted by the arrows. It's very highly reflective. That's what the machine uses to measure the width of the material and where it starts and finishes. If that gets dirty, the machine's not going to be able to detect where the material is, and then you'll probably end up printing onto the bed. Most of our machines, it should be fairly easy to avoid printing on the bed, but very occasionally you may get a bit of ink mist on it. So just wiping it down from time to time with a bit of cleaning solution, some of the Sol ink cleaning solution, and again, a lint-free cloth will normally take that off with a little bit of elbow grease. But if you keep it up together, you won't need to do that very often. So this section, I'm just going to talk about some of the calibrations that you need to do to get the best out of your machine. So you've got the bidirectional alignment. This is relevant for any machine that does side-to-side printing. The smaller LEF series doesn't have this feature, but the vast majority of our machines do. So you can get to this in the menu of the machine, and if you run the detail setting, bidirectional alignment, you'll get these lines printed. What you're looking for is the straightest line without any kind of a kink in it at all. That allows the dots to realign themselves as the head is coming back over the surface, just meaning you can get double the print speed out of the machine if you were to print it on unidirectional mode. Most people print on bidirectional anyway, so you're probably not going to see much of a speed improvement, but you should see a significant print improvement if you see print starting to look a little bit fuzzy. Next up, we've got the feed calibration. Now, this is something that you need to do every time you change roll, really. Sometimes you may find that you get materials that are very close and you won't see much of a difference, but ideally you'll be doing this at the start of every roll. Same for the bidirectional, actually. Ideally, you'll be doing that at the start of every roll too. This one, you're looking for the smoothest shape. So as you can see in the diagram at the top, you're looking for the one that doesn't have a gap, but also doesn't have an overlap, and it's the smoothest surface. You can do half value, so if you find that two look pretty good, you can do a halfway value between the two. So in this case, we could probably look at doing 0.4 or 0.35 would be a good value to work from. This will alleviate any kind of horizontal banding that's caused by the material just not feeding evenly through the machine. Next up, print cut alignment. This one should be fairly self-explanatory. When the machine's printing, you just want to make sure that it's printing as close, it's cutting as close to the print job as possible. So over time, sometimes this can drift out ever so slightly, especially if you're in a room that gets very hot and cold. Over certain times of the year, it can throw these values out a little bit. So you may want to do this just from time to time. I recommend once every month or so, or if you notice that the alignment's starting to drift out. But yeah, this one's fairly simple. The reading that you're trying to adjust is the cut in alignment with the print. So all of those arrows, you're effectively moving the moving the cut around in order to match up the actual rectangle underneath this. This is in the cutting menu on the machine. And it's all detailed in the user manual on how to actually do that. Next up is setting the blade. So ideally what you're looking for with setting the blade depth, this will only count for machines that those of you, that have the original Roland blade holder. You have an adjustable cap on it, which you can screw and unscrew. That allows you to adjust the amount of blade exposed. Ideally, you want just the amount of blade showing that would cut through the actual material and not the backing paper. So a lot of the time, that's generally a good rule of thumb, no pun intended, is to actually go for kind of the thickness of a thumbnail. That's the way I tend to measure it. Obviously, it can vary a little bit depending on how thick the material is. But when you're trying to just give it a quick rough setup and then do tiny little tweaks from there, a good starting point is the thickness of a thumbnail. If the blade holder gets a little bit too dirty, because it can get a little bit of swarf buildup within it, you may find that the blade won't rotate and then you get kind of a stitch cut effect because the machine starts effectively cutting with the side of the blade rather than the tip. You can unscrew the cap, open it all up and just give it a clean out. Occasionally, if it still carries on getting stuck, maybe a drop of light machine oil, like sewing machine oil or 3-in-1, that will normally loosen things up enough to keep it going. Eventually, these do wear though, and they are consumable parts, so you may need to order one, but generally they last a good few years before they need replacing. Cutting strip as well. Now, this is something that I see that is very common out on site. And our tech support normally pick up on this, but from time to time I'll go out on site and I'll find that a customer is having issues with stitch cutting or in general poor cut quality. The cutting strip is there to protect the surface of the machine from the blade and protect the blade from the surface of the machine so it doesn't blunt so quickly if it's set incorrectly. That can, however, mean that if the blade is set incorrectly and it cuts into the cutting strip, you end up with a groove in that strip. The machine won't cut very nicely if it's cutting into that groove, because effectively what's happening is the blade is pushing the material into that groove more than cutting it. So you tend to get a scored surface or just a poor quality cut all round. Again, this is a consumable item. It's not very expensive, but it's worth keeping one on the shelf just in case. You may find that if you do call up with cut quality issues, one of the first things that our tech support team might ask you to do is to look at replacing the cutting strip. So having one of those on hand that you can stick straight into the machine is just very handy, because it allows things to progress much further for our tech support. Okay, temperature. All of our machines have a required operating temperature and a resting temperature. Resting temperatures tend to be a lot broader, but it's in the back of each user manual. They're usually around 15 degrees, I think, up to 50 degrees. But Versa UV machines are a little bit different. They require an operating temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. And I recommend that they actually stay at that temperature all the time. Otherwise, the machine will struggle to clean itself properly, and you'll probably arrive to use the machine with an error showing up on screen saying the temperature is too low. And that's not good for anyone, because you then have to wait for the machine to warm up. And of course, it's not good for the machine, because it means that the machine isn't able to operate correctly. Eco UV ink has an expiration date on it, so any of our UV machines, you need to keep an eye on the expiration date of the inks. This is something that I come across very, very regularly out on site. So what can happen is when these inks expire, you may find that you actually get nozzle deflections on the print heads, causing issues with the print quality. And also you may find that there's a slight color shift in it as well. I think more than anything else, it's actually the pigment that goes off within the ink, and that's what causes these problems. So definitely you want to make sure that all of those inks are kept in date. As soon as they go out of date, it may seem very wasteful, but you want to be swapping that in for a new cartridge, because it can cause more problems with the machine down the road, and it's really not very good for it at all. Media storage. So this is something I come across from time to time. So you occasionally get machines where the material might ripple through the machine as it's running. So ideally, what you'll be doing is you'll be keeping the material with the machine, not necessarily loaded in the machine, but if you keep it with the machine in the same environment, the material won't then go through any kind of acclimatizing process as it's warming up through the machine. You can imagine going from very cold, potentially very cold, to very hot. The material is going to suffer a little bit, and then it may not be able to absorb the ink properly. It may ripple, causing all sorts of bidirectional alignment issues. In order to reduce the chance of things like pressure marks in the material, you want to keep it on a rack or store it vertically. And really, you want to be wearing gloves. In an ideal world, of course, you want to be wearing gloves when you're loading or handling the material, because you may end up with fingerprints on the surface of it. So, as you can see, as we've gone through in this presentation, your printer's precision performance device. The more you look after it, the more it'll look after you. So if you follow all of these steps and some of the additional steps in the user manuals, you'll find that the machine will continue working better for longer, and it reduces the chance of downtime with the machine. So you get increased print quality, less time spent waiting for anybody to come out and rectify issues with the machine, and yeah, everything will be working happily. Any questions?
Brilliant, thank you, Ryan. Yeah, guys, if any of you have any questions, if you want to pop them into the chat window, and we'll ping them up on the screen, and we'll try and answer them if you have any. But hopefully you found that useful. As Ryan said, he spent a lot of time visiting customers and seeing things happen with machines, as do I with the academy, actually, sort of talking to people. And it really is a case of, if you look after your machine, it's going to look after you. They also hold their value better. Again, more money in the bag down the line. But really looking after your device will make your prints better. It will keep your printer running smoothly. and they're only kind of small things as well. One of the things Ryan sort of mentioned at the end there that I always like to mention as well when we're training is reading your manual. I know it sounds a bit silly, but nobody, or very rarely, do we find that people read the manual. Yet the manual, it tells you everything that you need to know about your machine. So it can be a little bit painstaking, but it's a really good it's a really good point just to read through that, because there's a lot of key information there as to looking after your machine. So we're getting a couple of questions coming in. Just going to ping these into the sort of questions tab. So let's start with the first one. Can you turn the Rolands off? This is regarding a solvent machine and a UV machine. Ryan, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, so I presume by this, Claire, you mean actually completely turning the machine off at the mains. This is not recommended at all. Whilst the machine still has power, it's able to clean properly. If it doesn't have any power, the machine's not able to do its maintenance cleans overnight, or obviously when the machine is left. And this can cause issues with it. Really recommend not doing this. In fact, it states in the user manual that it should always be left on at the back, but obviously switching it off at the front is absolutely fine.
Yeah, so as Ryan said, the machines do go to sleep, so they'll effectively be off. They use like real minimum power when they do, but they do need to be left switched on. I mean, if you as a scenario, if you had to move the printer to another room, or you're having some decorating done or something like that, and you need to switch it off for a bit, then that's probably fine. Just remember to switch it back on so that it could.
A few hours is absolutely fine on the rare occasion, but we really want to keep that to a minimum. And long periods of time are a big no-no without emptying the ink out of the machine effectively.
I guess another point there might be that if obviously holidays, things like that. So do you have any advice for if people are going on holiday?
If you're going on holiday, just make sure you do your manual clean before you leave. Make sure there's plenty of ink in the system. So make sure you've got plenty of ink in the cartridges. Empty your waste bottle before you go, because you don't want to come home and find a big puddle of ink on the floor because the waste bottle's overflowed. And just leave it powered on at the back so it can look after itself.
Yeah, I'd say if you could, if you do have a good friend who might be able to pop in and just check on it or run a quick print that you've set up in the queue, that would always help as well. Okay, next question. On my VS540, I did a feed calibration and set it perfectly, which worked, but as soon as I printed using the metallic profile, I had band.
Hi Neil, so I suspect possibly if the feed calibration was perfect, if it was printing fine with other colors, it may be that there's an issue with the metallic itself. So perhaps you had a little bit of nozzle deflection. Without seeing the test print on the machine or an image of the actual print, I can't say for certain, but I suspect that's probably the case. It's unlikely that the feed calibration could be absolutely perfect and one specific color would be incorrect, if that makes sense.
That answers your question. Ola, any chance we can get the slides? Yes, potentially. All of the webinars will soon be available online, because these are reasonably new to sort of our offering here. We don't have a section for the old ones on our website just yet, but we will do. So we do have a big show coming up in a couple of weeks, and we're kind of all eyes are focused on that at the minute. But as soon as that's done, we are going to try and work on getting a section so they'll be available. But if you would just like the presentation slides, you can drop me an email, and I'm sure that we can arrange that. I'll pop my my contact details up on the screen in a minute at the end for you. And another one here. So BN20, I've had to increase cutting pressure to achieve the same results. New blade makes no difference, having to use 180 where it used to be 80/90.
Okay, so going back to a part of the presentation itself, actually, so you may find that the cutting strip is damaged. That is something that I come across, like I said, fairly regularly, where the cutting strip has actually worn. In fact, a lot of people don't actually know to change it. It does stay in the user manual, but as Joe said, not everybody really reads those. But the cutting strip, if it's got any kind of a groove or dent in it, a good test actually, which I didn't mention during the webinar, is to kind of run your nail backwards and forwards on the cutting strip, if you can feel anything with your nail, that's generally a good indication that it probably needs to be replaced. You may be finding an issue with that. I can't see any reason why a brand new blade might not be cutting otherwise correctly.
Just one other point now on changing your cutting strip. Again, Ryan mentioned about on our YouTube channel, we've got some videos about the manual clean video. There's also a video on how to change your cutting strip on a BN20. So if you go to, well, you can get to our YouTube directly through the YouTube and just search for RolandDG UK, or you can go to rolanddg.co.uk and there's links to all of our social media at the bottom. So as I said, there's a video on changing the cutting strip, but there's also videos on the full manual weekly cleaning process for all of our printers. So yeah, definitely worth watching if you haven't watched it in a while, or if you just want to check that you're doing your weekly cleans correctly. But the only other note that I have there on your cutting forces, obviously the cutting strip might be one, but also just double check your nose cone, so that you've got enough blade extension. You know, if somebody
good point.
might have twisted the nose cone, you might not even have enough blade extension to be cutting. So you've got to crank it right up, but just double check, I guess. So Neil again, sorry, just saying the nozzles were perfect and it was the CMY started.
Okay. To be honest, I think that's probably one to ping over to our tech support team. Get some photos over to them and they can have a look. I suspect potentially that it may be that the feed calibration had crept out. Possibly, did you change materials between the feed calibration, or was this on the same roll you set that on?
Oh, and VersaWorks was set to use the printer settings for calibration.
Okay. Now this might explain it then in that case. So VersaWorks calibration settings. It's printer settings. Sorry, I've got myself muddled up there. Yeah, so that is the correct settings to use. Media settings are the one you want to avoid, because those ones are set by whoever built the profile. They might not be ready for your particular machine or environment. But using printer settings for calibration is correct. I guess you could get banding as well. So there's different types of banding, from nozzles missing, so it's not firing ink, so you get kind of stripes, so to speak. There's the feed calibration where you're getting gaps or overlaps. But also another thing could be the pull on the material. So Ryan mentioned earlier about checking that the pinch wheels and the grit wheel are nice and clean as well. If it's not pulling correctly, it could kind of shift the material in little jumps, which effectively could lead to banding as well. Or likewise, if there's too much tension on the back of the roll. Yeah, so a particularly heavy roll could cause the feed calibration to creep out as it gets less weight pulling back on it effectively as the material is used.
But again, if you're still struggling, as Ryan said, we've always got the tech support team here that you can contact. So another question here, on my BN20, the color of print comes out totally different when I'm trying to print on clear stickers. Could this be an issue with cleaning, maybe?
Now, when you're printing onto clear stickers, are you using the white ink with it in order to back it, or are you just printing directly onto the clear stickers without any white? This could cause the colors to just look completely different, or it may be that the profile you're using doesn't match up to the material. Every material has a slightly different color balance, and profiles generally try to counteract this.
Yeah, that sounds like a bit more of a in-depth question, kind of as to your settings on your machine, perhaps not so much relating to the sort of maintenance and looking after, but yeah, I mean, if you can, obviously we've got the Roland Academy that we go through all of the different types of profiles and aspects of color as well on our courses, so it might be worth looking into something like that. Do you have to change dampers after a certain time?
No, there is no set time frame on changing dampers. No certain amount of use. Generally, we monitor them. They're checked when we do any kind of maintenance visit on the machines. If it looks like they may need changing, there are certain things we can kind of observe that shows that they might need changing. But usually, it tends to be when you start getting lots of dropout or whole colors drop out at a certain time. That's usually means it's time to change the damper.
That looks like it. So no more questions, but thanks for joining us. The next webinar will be up on the website soon. Keep an eye out. And again, as usual, if you guys have got any questions, you can always get in touch with us. So RolandDG.co.uk. Our phone number is 01275 335540. And if you did want to contact me, I think Ola was asking about the presentation slides. My email, I'll just pop this up on the screen a minute for you guys. 2 secs, is jwigsell@rolanddg.com. There you go. So have a good weekend, everybody, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.